Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline Magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks. Today I'm joined by Philip Jordan, partner of CoCo Cocktail Bar and Movers and Shakers mobile bars and events. Also, he owns Under the Prom Night Club, and he's involved in 12 other businesses in total. He's a bit of a mover and shaker. Welcome to Punchline Talks. Hi, Philip. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Mark. Nice to meet you too.
Well, look, gosh, where do we start really in the event management business? Can you tell us a little bit about the companies? So CoCo Cocktail Bar and the other companies, how many people do you employ? If you don't mind me saying, what's the kind of turnover of the different businesses?
No problem. Well, CoCo, the cocktail bar, started in 2010, the 2nd of October 2010. Under the Prom, the nightclub was the 11th of March 2015, and then Movers and Shakers came from some of our clients asking us to do some of their weddings. Prior to COVID, there were 8 members of full-time staff, and then in total 30 people that worked with us part-time, some week to week, some every few months. We had a really nice team, and we're still in touch with a lot of those people. Turnover-wise, 7 figures for Under the Prom, and CoCo, varies between 300,000 to 400,000. But yeah, I've been involved in the industry, hospitality, for about 20 years. Worked in America at the Hard Rock Hotel. Done work experience in London at places like the Ritz, and really enjoyed the industry. I've met so many good people, had a lot of fun in my time. As I've got older, the finishes at 6 or 7 a.m. aren't quite as appealing, but it's still a great industry to be involved with. And yes, of course, this period has been tough, but we've pivoted quite well. During the summer, when we were allowed to do outdoor events, that worked well for parties of 30. Then also when we were allowed to do indoor events at CoCo, particularly, we picked up a lot of wedding bookings, so wedding receptions, gender reveal parties for up to 30 people, birthday parties as well, and in general that they worked really well. After that, when the next set of changes came about for October and then December, we pivoted again and created a down the rabbit hole concept. That was we had a lot of sponsorship from Hendrix, and we created an afternoon tea event, but that was accompanied with more nightclub feel, and a number of and variety of themed cocktails. It worked really well, and actually, the way that we filled the bookings actually collaborated with how I've done business in property, and I know that a lot of businesses were struggling to get around the situation where it was tables of 6 and ensuring that people were from the same households. So what we did was actually contact letting agents in and around Cheltenham, asked for letting agents to put us in contact with HMOs or multi-lets that had up to 4 to 6 people, meaning by virtue of advertising to those particular properties, we'd be compliant, and we filled our diary for December. So actually it worked really well. And in the interim, we've done a lot of virtual masterclasses. In fact, I've got one on Monday for 108 people. That's with a company. So we send out the drinks and all the ingredients, the glassware, and then I jump on a Zoom and try to keep the bunch as unrowdy as possible. But yeah, with that, the virtual masterclasses and a certain set of discerning customers that we have who want batched cocktails, and we've just put together a 7-litre batch of a Hibiki whiskey barrel that we have fat washed, and then we've kept that in a barrel for the last 3 months. So we've been doing some exciting stuff. We're in a positive position. Don't get me wrong, this situation the cost of it will be far reaching for the next couple of years. We have had good reaction from a lot of our creditors who've supported us throughout the situation. Some have allowed us deferrals, some have allowed us discounts, some have actually waived the costs. And then finally, our landlords, we've been very lucky. We've got 2 landlords who have worked with us closely, supported us immensely. We had a slush fund at the start of lockdown, which meant we paid up the rent until December. They didn't require that or request that, but from this point onwards, they've been incredibly supportive. And tried to find as many ways to help us get back to the situation that we had before. Now, obviously, like a lot of the businesses that I'm a part of with Turf, the independent local businesses that are in hospitality in Cheltenham, we don't know what people are going to want. So we're kind of scrambling at the moment to put into place the processes and systems that allow us to be compliant with the government. But ultimately as well, a lot of the team members that we have are fantastic. They've been kept in touch with us. Respectfully, in the time that they haven't been able to work with us, they found other work, and I really like that they've done that. So some aren't as available as much as before. Some of the people's situations have changed as well. Some want to only work to a certain time. The club generally, you're getting away at 7 a.m. in the morning. And so I think a lot of people, most people, in fact, what they did before and what they'll do in the future has changed. And
I've got to ask you, so what's the biggest lesson that you've learned out of this personally, professionally?
At the moment, I'm actually working with a business consultant, because I have had, during this period where we've maintained relationships with our clients and our partners, we've moved bookings where we had bookings, we've kept in touch with the team, obviously pivoted with the venues, but actually a lot of my time and effort has been spent on maneuvering my businesses in property and consultancy to a high level. And more that I've looked at that and the successes that I've had, I've been very fortunate to pick up 10 properties since September. That really, what I was doing before COVID really didn't serve me well. I was in the business too much. I wasn't very good at delegating. I didn't outsource effectively. Some of the team members that we have who have done fantastic stuff, occasionally would feel the brunt of my frustration. And that was because I wasn't communicating effectively what I wanted. And so now we've spent the last few months, Ross, my business partner with the bar and the club, and James, one of our key members of the team, putting together a system that will work for the rest of the team to come on board. There'll be no confusion. There'll be more clearly defined roles, but it'll also mean that I'm not so heavily involved in every single facet of the business, because I found that as I've grown and grown with more businesses, I find that at times I'm over-promising and under-delivering in all walks of what I'm doing, whether it's providing someone a wedding quote or communicating effectively with the team, getting the rotas out in time and things like that. So we've been very fortunate. Some of our key members of our team, people like Gabriella, people like Sam, people like Gemma, have been in communication with me. They're excited about the things that we've got in mind for them to take on board. Obviously remunerate them for their extra time. But for me, the biggest lesson is what I was doing before wasn't effective. It was working, but I think the reason, when Ross and I set out in 2010, our business plan said to have 5 venues by the end of 2020. And that hasn't happened because the way that we've micromanaged things and we haven't outsourced things and we haven't done things effectively. And I think my mentality wouldn't have changed with that had I not been involved with property, because I think the people that I've met in property, particularly people like my mentor, who's got over 700 properties himself, and other people that I network with, part of this group called Prosperity that's run by a guy called Danny Inman, which is fantastic. Met with people that are doing these things, and you can't possibly achieve those things on your own. And I'm sure with yourself, we've spoken briefly about your successes, your businesses. There's absolutely no way that you'd be able to do it without the support of other people. So for me, that's the biggest thing. And I think as well, quality time with my family, my other half, and friends. And actually, shamefully, I'd say that even with the lockdown restrictions, and I haven't broken those with family, I've seen more of my family in the last year than I have in the last 10 years of being involved with the hospitality industry, which is ridiculous. I'm from an Italian family. Family is incredibly important. And so that part of what I'm doing moving forward, where my business partner and I have agreed that we're going to do alternate weekends, is something we've never done before, but is essential. I don't wish to go back to doing every weekend. And that's only going to be achievable by communicating with the team for them to be able to do that in our stead. And we do trust them. that we're very lucky with the team that we've got.
I mean, let's be honest, the hospitality industry itself is, especially what you're in, it's long hours, it's long hours, it's long hours, and it's long hours in order to be successful. Can I quickly ask you about the COVID passports that the government has been talking about bringing in?
Okay.
Where do you fit on that yourself? Would you like to see them, or would you think it's a no-go area? What do you reckon on that front?
It's a topic that we've discussed quite a lot as a group, as Turf, and I think there isn't any clearly defined explanation from the government at present. So I think what I've found as well during this time with COVID is I don't try and invest too much time worrying about what could be until it's clearly defined and we're told what's to be expected. Do I find it peculiar that hospitality has been, I suppose, almost victimized when you think about retail and when you go shopping, and that those same type of processes aren't in place in shops, and obviously a non-essential retailer come back and those same type of processes aren't applicable either there. Do I think it would be a good thing? I if it's essential, if it stops a further outbreak, if it stops this situation occurring again, then of course I suppose some form of protocol makes sense. I wonder how it could be possibly policed properly. I do have my concerns in that regard. I think when you look at what's happened with track and trace and how difficult that was to police, to start with, you'd be managing the situation with the QR code, and then you'd have people who you knew would have smartphones, but say they haven't got a phone with them or no smartphone with them, and then also they haven't got any ID, but then they're given you details that you have to keep for 21 days in a paper form. It's difficult to manage that, but you're expected to manage it. But then it's not only to manage it, but it's to effectively manage that, bearing in mind the cost that applies. Now, we all want to do things effectively, responsibly. I think we've all managed that as a group, as Turf, and I know lots of hospitality businesses that I'm friends with across the country that have worked hard to do things properly. But doing things properly, like with the meal or tables of 6 and this whole process of managing track and trace, it adds 5-10% to the labor margins, and with some businesses that makes it unsustainable. We've got to assess that. We haven't really started to think about how we'd manage that, because I know that so many occasions we've started to be proactive, and then the government, and I'm not moaning the government because it's the most impossible job ever. I think anyone that was being in this situation of managing this pandemic would have had countless problems to deal with. But I think where we've invested before and then the situation has changed, we're going to try and avoid that and wait till the last possible situation allows for us to, actively do it in the best possible way, and then communicate it with our team. And then after that, our customer base,
Do you think, I mean, I've talked to various people in the hospitality sector, and one of the things that keeps coming around is that obviously they're going to come out lockdown now, they're going to start to do it. A lot of them are carrying a lot of debt. The margins that they work on are very thin.
Yes.
Do you see in, say, it's funny that the government is investing in job centres. I don't know if you know, in Gloucester, the old Argos has been converted to get 49 careers. So do you see a bit of a bloodbath coming down the way in the hospitality sector, that some of these companies just will not make it through? I don't want to be negative, but let's be honest about it. It is a global pandemic. Some of them aren't going to, well, you tell me. That's how I read it.
I know some people who had businesses, and this is not being disrespectful with some of those businesses, but some of those businesses ceased to exist quite quickly into May, June last year. Now, I know that, respectfully, those people that I know either as friends or acquaintances, they hadn't been managing their business properly, and they've been running hand to mouth, week to week. But I think sometimes the plans that Rishi puts together, they're fantastic, but the actual delivery of when he sets the date, that monies will be available, to when a council is then able to provide those monies to different businesses, is often 4 to 6 weeks difference. And that difference makes it very difficult. Now, in Cheltenham, I think we're quite lucky. I think that particularly the businesses that that I'm involved with Turf seem to be quite stable. They've been able to maintain relationships with their landlords. And I think, even though, like for us, the cost of this will be felt over the next 2 to 3 years, and maybe long after that, because there's talks of increases in VAT and other taxes as well. But I think when you look at the businesses in Cheltenham, I think they've prepared as best as they can. I don't seem to feel that many of these businesses will struggle too much. It will be tough. There will be belt tightening. There are members of the Turf that have had to, separate certain parts of their team and become more involved. But actually, I look at the high street and hospitality. The independents, the butchers, the bakers, the candlestick makers, I think are actually in a more strong position than the big chains. I think we don't have the same levels of hierarchy. We're able to react more quickly. Of course, we don't have the same buyer power and economies of scale, but I think actually we've been able to effectively communicate with our customer bases much, much better than businesses that are chains in town. And I talk about 2 of those chains, which I won't mention, but friends of mine that had booked birthday parties that communicated to find out what was happening with the deposits, whether they'd received back the monies they put forward to bar spend, and one didn't receive a reply for nearly 10 weeks, another nearly 16. One of these people was made redundant. So that money was incredibly important. And I think, look, moving forward, that they won't view that business in the same way as they did before. Whereas I think the businesses within Turf, I can't speak outside of Cheltenham, but the businesses in Turf, I really admire what they've all been doing. They've really worked hard to maintain communication with their customer bases. And, a lot of them have done mobile options, a lot of them have done collection options, and some of them have done it for, nowhere near the margins that they'd usually work to, but to facilitate the needs of their customer base. I think it's worked well.
Yeah, I've known some people who've done click and collect, and it was really to keep their staff busy.
Yes.
And keep them in the business, to keep them having a sort of working wage, but also they were worried about their staff's mental health. So it was another reason they did it. It wasn't just about making money, and also you've got to look after your staff. I'm going to go back slightly to you. You're only 39. I say only 39 when I'm 56.
I'm not quite yet 39.
So you're looking good. You're looking good there.
Thank you.
For your age, I would never have put you down as 39. Where are you from? Where do you live? Where you always live in Cheltenham?
No, I came here to Cheltenham from for university in 2001. I'm from Bromley, which if I say that to people in Cheltenham, they don't know. So I'll say just outside of London, which I suppose it is a London borough. But I suppose if we were being really pernickety, you'd say Kent. But yeah, I grew up in Bromley. Loved it. Great.
And how did you get into business then? How did you start this business? You said you got a business partner, so you must have been quite young then. Were you in your early 20s or something?
So I'd managed a number of different venues, and then I'd worked in America in hotels, and then I was involved in a startup that was in the entertainment industry. And one of my business partners, Ross, we lived together. He was a doorman at CoCo. It was actually owned by some other partners. They did very well with it, I think, but they had so many other business interests that at the time I think they weren't able to put as much time into the business as I would have liked. They were keen to move out of that business, and he asked for first refusal. I remember we were actually playing some computer games. So this takes you back to, I think we were playing something like Call of Duty. So I haven't played computer games for years, but not that I don't enjoy computer games, they're great, but I think that I had more time then. But he and I were playing computer games. I think we had a beer. He's like, what do you reckon of us taking on CoCo? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that was it. And so then we had to put together a business plan. We both had monies aside to start the business. We went to a number of banking institutions to, obviously work on additional funds to match the funds we had as a loan. Quite disappointed with some of the responses that we had from some of the businesses, bearing in mind how much, how much meat we had in the game in terms of experience. Our business plan was extremely comprehensive. But then HSBC, they took a punt on us, and we never looked back. And that was our first. We opened the 2nd of October 2010.
And have you ever businesses then followed on from that? So you obviously ran CoCo Cocktail Bar.
Yeah.
Then you moved into the movers and shakers mobile bars. Was that just a natural progression, or you saw a gap in the market? How did you end up doing that?
But yeah, before Movers and Shakers Under Prom came into being, and that was a nightclub. It had a bit of a checkered history prior to us. I think in 6 years, 4 or 5 owners had attempted to work on the business and hadn't been successful, unfortunately. But we saw some potential in it. We thought that we could do it properly, and we did. We had some help from friends that helped us paint and decorate and turn the business around. And our focus really was on, a good music policy, great customer services, decent drinks, value, and a place that was welcoming and safe to come to, because there'd been some historic police issues where the type of clientele that was invited to the previous establishments wasn't really befitting that. But yeah, so we had some real successes with starting Under the Prom Up, and that grew and grew. And one of our clients said, "Oh, would you ever consider doing a mobile bar for us for our wedding?" And we'd never done anything like that, but we said yes, as we usually do. And at that point, we didn't have a bar. We had no idea.
Yeah.
We had some of the gear, but no idea. And we worked with them to understand what they wanted. Got ourselves a first couple of bars, and now we've got 9 different types of bars that we own. We work with a number of really cool wedding venues. We've got some really cool partners in the catering and marquee industry that we work with on a number of really cool weddings. But yeah, that just came out. That was just born out of some of our client base liking the way that we do what we do. I won't profess to being the best mixologist, but I'd like to think that I bring a certain energy to an experience when people visit us, and I hope that is conveyed through the team that we have too. Well,
I've got to ask you then, Philip. So, what's your favourite cocktail?
My favourite cocktail, it changes occasionally, but I love a Negroni. I love a Negroni. The bitterness with a Negroni.
I'm showing I don't know what that is.
That's fine, no problem. It's a 3-part cocktail that has martini. I tend to have a martini rosso. It has gin, and then you can use either Campari or Aperol. I prefer Campari. And recently, a friend of mine, Harry, has introduced me to a mezcal version of that, where you replace the gin with mezcal. A friend of mine, Alex, I thought he was going to punch me when I got him to try it because he thought it was horrific. But for me, I love the bitterness, the tartness, and I love the way it cleanses the palate. You have it before a meal or in between a course, and then what you were eating or drinking beforehand is no longer there. In the same way that when I first really started to learn about fragrances, a woman introduced me to smelling coffee beans in between each fragrance, so you could then smell the next fragrance perfectly. And I think that the Negroni does that for me.
You see, I don't drink cocktail. I don't really drink a lot of bubbly stuff because I just can't handle it very well. It goes straight to my head. 2 cocktails and I'm pretty game over, actually. Unfortunately, I'm just showing my. Well, I just can't handle my drink anymore. I think just the way it is. But I'd love to try that. I would love to try that. I've got to wrap this up. I was supposed to have only done a sort of 8-minute short video with you, but I've enjoyed it so much. I've got to always ask you on a kind of big interview. I always ask, and I haven't prepped you about this because I tend to ask beforehand. What's the 3 top business tips that you could give or pass over, please?
I think one thing that I've done since day dot has tried to be the hardest working person in the room. I think particularly when I was in the process of having the bar and the club, and then also starting property, and I'd work till 6, 7 in the morning at the bar or club on a Friday night, take a change of clothes, have a quick wash in the toilets, drive to my designated property area, do 20 viewings, having not slept, and then come home, have some food, have an hour's sleep, and then do the same again. I think if you always have that mentality, and I think I look at the last 10 years, I've averaged over 70 hours a week. There is no shortcuts to it. You can't, I think the adage of work smart, not hard, is great when you're at a latter stage and you've got more resource to delegate, to outsource, then that's absolutely fine. But when you start out and you have limited resource, then you are the resource. You are, that for me is key. The second thing I think is something that I wasn't big on until the last year, but is personal branding, and how you communicate what you do on social media and other channels and every walk of life. I didn't do as much of it. A lot of what I do in property is manufactured with angel investment. And prior to COVID, I'd only raised, 110,000 pounds in a year to purchase property, and we give our angel investor 10% ROI over a year. In 2 days' time will be a year, and I at the moment I've hit 518,000 pounds of angel investment, which facilitates 51,000 pounds of investment return for our angels, but has also meant I've been able to purchase those 10 properties, refinance, and still give the angel investors their money back if they want it back. So for me, personal branding and being more present, I suppose omnipresent on social media has made that happen. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of social media. I think if I didn't have the business I had, I wouldn't be on it. But then I do have the businesses that I have, so I have to like what social media is about. And as actually, the more you do it, like anything, I remember when I first started out with the cocktails, I was like, no, I don't really want to do cocktails. And it was because I wasn't any good at it. But the more you do it, the better you become at it.
Yeah.
So going on to what you said there, being the hardest working person, the personal branding, and then the last one is, like, I would say fits in line with friends of mine that are PT instructors, and it's all about repetitions. And it really is that you will fail, but the more you do it, the more you keep trying, the more you keep banging on the wall, to get to the situation or the outcome that you want, the more that you'll achieve. There are plenty of times that I've failed, but I've continued to keep going. And I think I look at when I was 15, I wasn't that confident, and I wanted to work on my level of confidence. And actually, I think my family won't even know that I'd done this until they see this interview, if they watch it. That I took on work in the evening, knocking on doors for Anglian home improvements. And I was that unconfident. The first 2 people I knocked on the door, I went to say the pitch, having prepared the pitch. And this old lady, the first person I ever spoke to, I cried in front of. And she was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong, dearie? What's happened?" And I couldn't get the words out. She took me in her house, bless her. It was just a commission role as well. So my role was to get these leads. She sat me down, got me a cup of tea, mate, gave me a cake. She's like, "What's going on?" She's like, I'm supposed to talk to you about your windows, doors, and conservatories, but all I've done is cry because I can't get my words out." But I wasn't confident. People that know me in Cheltenham will think that I've always been like this. I haven't, but I think the more you do things, the more you get out of your comfort zone. And that's why I said repetition. The more you keep doing it, the more you don't give up, even when there's adversity. That's the key for me. So those would be the 3 things that I would say that are essential. If we look at latter stage of where I am now, then of course I would say things like outsourcing and delegation. But to start with, when you're starting your own business, being the hardest working person, working on your personal branding, and not giving up and just repeating the process, that for me are the key 3 fundamentals, because that applies to anyone that's starting out.
Last question before we have
Please.
What's the latest book that you've read?
So I've been rereading a few. I did a challenge in 2019 to read 52 books in a year, and actually I did a speed reading course to be able to do that, and it really worked. But I've got a number of consultancy clients that I've worked with recently, and the book that I'm rereading at the moment is a book that is called Be More Pirate, and it's amazing. It has all the, basically talks about how what we understand as the pirates of, you know, the 1700s were actually misrepresented, and they were the first people to create equal pay, proper insurance processes, and how they managed to defeat the English and Spanish Armada in, you know, when they were massively overmatched. But there's lots of examples where other people have been more pirate. So Apple, the Wu-Tang Clan, you know, and other pioneers in their different industries. You know, Apple with what they did with regards to Apple Music, you know, where I think a lot of different businesses were trying to shut down the idea of people sharing and streaming music, and spent a lot of time and energy, like Sony did, trying to stop people sharing music. And Apple recognized that, well, they're sharing music, they're going to do it anyway. So why don't we create a platform to do that? But that book's incredible. I've recommended it to a couple of clients of mine that I have. Another one that I reread recently is The Chimp Paradox as well. And I'll be honest, I think with my mother's Italian side to me, Latin temperament, I've always had a temper that I've not liked and I've had to work on. And just understanding that particular book, understanding the why you react to certain things in a certain way, and how you can try and make sure that you don't do things in a way that is negative. I know I've given two there, but I'd say those are two that I really like. And I think my Bible for everything would be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. You know, I think little things that I think I see a lot of the time when people communicate with me, and I try to convey it with people that I work with, you know, being enthused about someone else before you try and ask for something for yourself. You know, something is lost. And I think as well, in this day with social media, I think people forget a lot of the niceties. The amount of times I'll get messages that don't even include a hi, how are you? You know, just it's really peculiar. You know, I'm 39 on the 26th of this month, and I still, whenever I get a birthday present or a Christmas card, a Christmas present, or any present, I'll write a thank you card, and I still do that to this day. I just think that really stands out, I think, and it's essential. But I think some of those lessons that are in How to Win Friends and Influence People can support anyone, not just in business, but in life, in all walks of whatever they're doing. So I've given you three there. So
yeah. Well, we've run out of time. Philip, I could talk to you forever. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Philip Jordan, thank you ever so much. Thanks for talking to Punchline Talks.
Thank you, Mark. Take care.